It's the first state to create Reparations Task Force to study how slavery and systemic racism have harmed Black Americans in this country. Now, the group has almost finished a final proposal outlining what compensation should look like and who would be able to benefit. Dawn Bassiano was one of the many people who told their stories of racial injustice to this task force. She shared how her ancestors came to Coloma, California, that's a gold rush town, as enslaved people. They gained their freedom, and they worked very hard to buy more than 400 acres of land, which included a gold discovery site. Then the state seized it under eminent domain. So instead of being passed down through her family, the land was turned into the Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park. We met Bassiano on that land, and she told us what reparations would look like for her.
Imagine being able to look around and see, all this is mine. You know, I own this. This is within my family. I wouldn't have to worry about, am I going to have enough when I retire? Where am I going to be? You know, financially, what are things going to look like? That wouldn't be a concern. And that's reality when you talk about generational wealth. And that generational wealth was ripped away. Pearlie Monroe is my great-grandfather, and he planted most of the trees that you see here. Slavery was here. It wasn't like the South, but it was here. My great-grandmother, Evelyn Binion, married Pearlie Monroe in 1931, and Pearlie Monroe is the grandson of Nancy and Peter Gooch. Nancy and Peter came to California as slaves to work in the mines. When California became a state, they were allowed their freedom. Nancy started making money for herself. She sewed, she cooked. Her and her husband, Peter, bought some 20, 30 acres of land out here in Coloma, and from there just continued to buy more land. Coloma was at one point essentially a Black town. There were Black business owners here. You know, they owned homes, property. When folks outside saw that the land had some value, that's when you see the shift, and you see it slowly moving from this place where Black families lived to, you know, white families coming in and displacing them. 200 acres was actually taken through eminent domain. It hurts. It hurts because Pearlie fought so hard to keep this land up here. He went to court, he tried to fight, and, you know, and ultimately he wasn't able to keep anything. And it hurts to walk up here and see what he saw, touch what he may have touched. They never lived here. They owned it, but they never lived here. It was strictly for rental property. And it's just something that should have stayed within the family, and it didn't. So I almost want to go around the entire house and just touch everything, you know? If he was not forced to give up his land, we would still be living up here, enjoying everything that's here. The river, the water. The trees would not look the way that they do now. These trees should be bearing fruit, you know. We need some truth behind what's displayed and what's told. But the story is that he sold. You see that in many, many places. Oh no, Pearlie sold the land to the state. No, they came and took the land. And say it. It was taken through eminent domain. You know, you have to dig for it to learn who lived here and that slavery even existed here. Reparations for me looks like getting what pieces of the park that are here that the state owns returned to the family. And then the full and true story being told, you know, that story of my family. That's what reparations looks like for me.
Dawn Bassiano is not the only person who's claiming that her family was forced to sell their land to build this state park. There are other Black families that have come forward as well. The Reparations Task Force is recommending that the state now create an agency which would process and corroborate claims for reparations. California's governor gave the task force until July to recommend what compensation would look like and, more importantly, who would qualify. I think a big shout out and thank you to Dawn Bassiano for telling that story, because I think it's confusing for a lot of people. What is it? How would it work? But when she lays it out the way she did, you can really understand why people feel, hey, this wasn't right.
Yeah.
It's important to listen to these stories.
Exactly.
Sure is.
We will be right back.